Yes, we can see your screen and the recording has begun.
Good. Okay, thank you very much, Rel. Hello, my name is Noam Fass. I am managing the provider relations team here at Libris. I've been with Libris since 2016, and I joined the provider relation team in late 2023. As part of my first initiative when I went inside the new position is to try and communicate with as many providers as possible, with as many content providers as possible, to understand what is working well with our current processes and what can be improved, what are your pain points, and what things we think that can streamline our communication. So the first thing that I saw is that multiple providers indicated that they never saw how their content look in Alma, and basically they're not that familiar with how Alma looks, how Libris customers are experiencing their content in Alma. And this brought me to the mind, maybe I should have a webinar explaining all content providers about Alma, explaining content providers what is the experience that their customers, our joint customers, I would say, have when they work with Alma. And this is why we have this session. I'll start by presenting you the agenda for today. So as explained, I'll give you a very high level about Alma, about the user interface, about the experience that our customers are, their journey inside Alma. Then I think the most important part, at least for me, I'll present you the new provider platform. Essentially, this is a platform that is dedicated for the provider. Providers can access this platform in order to see how their content looks in the community zone, how their content looks for customers who are utilizing Alma. Then I'm going to pause. I'm going to review the Q&A panel, see whether we have any questions. And if time allows, I added 2 more sections for the second part of this webinar. I'd like you to get to know my team. I'd like you to understand how we work here in Libris. First of all, just to be polite and tell you what we do. But second of all, if you have any thoughts, how we can improve our communications with providers, how we can improve in general, I'll be happy to listen. And at the end of this webinar, I'll tell you a bit about additional activities we have for the near future. As Rel just mentioned, this session is being recorded, so let's get started. The first thing I want to show you is that because this session is recorded, it will be available in our webinar page. I'm going to click on it so you can see exactly how this page looks like. Any webinar that the content team has is presented within this dedicated webinar page. So like any other webinar, this webinar will be presented here and you'll be able to get to the recording and to the presentation itself. Let's go back to the presentation. And one last thing before we begin. I want to start by telling you that everything you see right now is a demo of Alma and the provider platform. If at any point you'll have to leave the webinar, that's perfectly okay. I want you to know that my goal is for you to reach out to me and tell me that you saw the webinar, you understood that you have the ability to access and see your content in the community zone, and you would like to get the credentials to do that. Once I'll get an email from you, I will ask my development team if they are able to produce you credentials so you can access your own platform and see how your content look. Don't worry, this presentation or this slide, I would say, will also appear in the middle of the presentation, so you're able to see my email again and again. Let's get started. As I mentioned, I want to do the most important thing, to review Alma with you. So I'm going to go back to my browser and tell you a bit about Alma. Alma is a library management software. It is set to help the library with any needs that the library has. Alma is SaaS, meaning it's software as a service. It's on the cloud. So if you have internet access, whether you're at home or in the office, you have ability to access Alma, even from your mobile phone. Just to emphasize, I'm taking off my hat as Noam Fass, the provider relations manager that works for Libris, and I'm putting on my hat now as a customer. I am now working for Alma University. I'm an academic institution. I'm communicating with you, the providers, and I'm communicating with Libris, but I am now an academic institution. So the first thing I do in order to access this platform is to access the URL that I got, enter my username and password, and click on the login button. Let me just try and make the screen a bit bigger so you can see. In case you can't see, please let me know and I'll make it a bit bigger. Okay, so this is Alma. When the librarian accesses the software, this is what they see. Of course, there are separate roles or different roles in the library, so Alma may be a bit different for each one of the customers who are using it, but essentially this is the user interface, the UI, that Exlibris users, Alma users are seeing when they access the platform. There are two main elements to the user interface. The first element is the menu, the left menu, which has all the modules that Alma has to offer. And the second element is the top search bar. With your permission, I'll tackle the first bar, the left bar, the menu bar, which is just for your information, very high level explanation about the various functionality that Alma has to offer. The first two menu items are related to acquisitions. Alma, as a software, is able to communicate any acquisition that you would like to make with content provider. So just a reminder, I am now an academic institution. I have the ability to define in Alma the vendor that I'm communicating with. In the vendor, I'll have the ability to define their contact information, their very high level detail about the provider. I'm able to associate funds that will be working with this provider. I'll be able to define a communication other than email if the provider is supporting EDI, for example, which is electronic data interchange. Alma knows to provide this kind of communication with providers. So whenever I create a purchase order line in my system in Alma, it can be sent to the provider without the need to going to the provider platform and doing it there. Everything that the institution needs is inside Alma in terms of acquisition. So we spoke about defining a vendor. I can add a fund and ledger. And once I have these two, I would say mandatory parts, I can create purchase order lines and send it to vendor. Once the vendor got my purchase order line, they can either email me back, which is one way, or they can use the electronic data interchange, which is another option, and everything will come right inside Alma and will be recorded in Alma. If the provider will send me an invoice, it will be part of my invoicing. I will know that I need to pay for this specific resource, but everything in terms of acquisition can be managed within Alma. Again, this is a very, very high level session, so I'm not going to drill down on the entire options, but I just want you to know that there are two models who are specifically dedicated for acquisitions. The next module I want us to review is the fulfillment model. I always like to say that this is the bread and butter of the library. This is the module who is responsible for loaning books, returning books, handling the patron's fine and fees, all the elements that the library needs in order to have the fundamental aspects of the library. If you want an interlibrary loan, if my institution is communicating with other Alma institutions and my institution would like to facilitate an interlibrary loan process, Alma knows to do that through the fulfillment module. The next module is the discovery module. The discovery module is set to be the back office of our discovery interface, which is called Primo. A reminder, I'm a librarian. I'm now sitting in the circulation desk. This is not what my patrons or researchers will see. This interface that you see right now is what the librarian sees. But when a patron walks inside the library or a researcher walks inside the library and they see the computer in the middle of the library, they do not see this interface, they see Primo. They see the Primo interface. This discovery module is the back office of Primo. So if I, as a librarian, would like to configure a certain element to appear or not appear in Primo for my patrons, this is where I do that. Again, very high level explanation. One of the last modules that I would like us to go through is the resources model. This model is set to manage the resources of the library, whether it's physical resources, electronic resources, digital resources. Alma is a very robust system in that aspect. Alma was kicked off in 2012, and ever since we are keep on growing and growing. We are customer oriented product, meaning that our customers really help us build the product. They ask for enhancements, we understand their needs, and we add anything that the customer needs to our platform. So the resources model is set to manage the library's resources, physical, digital, electronic. The administration and the analytics are essentially here to manage the administration part of the library, handle users, handle students who are accessing the interface, and the analytics part is set to help the library measure I dare to say everything that they need to measure, because as they always say, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. We keep on hearing more and more during the last few years how libraries need the ability to measure everything that they do. How many loans did they get? How many returns did they get? What's going on with their fine and fees? What's the best collection that is being utilized by the institution? Essentially, almost everything that can be measured is being used by the analytics module. Okay, this is the left panel. This is the menu. I really wanted to give you an overview about what Alma customers are seeing. I think now for you, the most important part is the search bar. As I mentioned, Alma is very robust, lots of functionality. Alma also allows you to search for whatever you need. If you created a purchase order line in the acquisition model, you can search for order lines. If you got an invoice, you can search for invoice. If you got a request from patron to loan a book, you can view the request. You can view the list of users. Anything that can be searched, Alma supports it. In our session, I would like us to focus on two main search elements: the electronic portfolios and the electronic collection. You may call electronic collection electronic package. You may call electronic portfolio electronic title, but I would like us to focus on the electronic collection. I'm going to run a very wide keyword search, and I would like you to focus just 1 second on this very small dropdown. I have the ability to search my institution, meaning search for holdings that are in my institutions, and I have the ability to search the community zone in order to see Ex Libris knowledge base. I'm not going to go over the community zone for 1 second. I would like us to go over the institution zone. I'm going to do a very broad search for electronic collections which are part of my institution. As you can see, there's a small house icon. It's very important to understand that whatever search results that I get right now is part of the holdings in my institution, and most likely it is exposed to my patrons in the discovery system. So for example, if I just search a very, very broad search for the word art, I see that in my institution, I got 228 collections that answer this search. I'm searching in my institution, and I'm seeing that I have multiple collections that answer this search bar. Let me show you, for example, one collection, the ProQuest Central. As you can see, the ProQuest Central is a collection that has within it a little bit over 22,000 portfolios, a little bit over 22,000 titles in it. This is the collection, and this is part of my institution. Very important to understand that everything that I'm seeing now is part of my institution and is being reflected to my patrons in the discovery system. The next thing that I want to show you is the community zone. But before I'll do that, I want to tell you a short story to help me pass whatever I want to pass to you. So I am an institution, and I just got a word from one of my professors that they want me to purchase a certain collection, a certain package from a certain provider. The first thing that I would do is communicate with the provider and tell them that I would like to gain access for their material. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I would ask the provider to share with me a file, and this file should hold the titles that I want my patrons to be exposed to. Then a week after, and again, I'm 15 years back, and then a week after, I would communicate again with the provider and ask them to share another file with me. Maybe they have an updated file for this collection that I just purchased. And then on an ongoing basis, every time the provider will need to get multiple communications from various institutions asking if they have any updates for their collection. Right now in Alma, the experience for the customer should be better. We really want to make our customers have seamless experience, the easiest thing that they can do in order to activate the resource they just purchased from you. So my story will be the institution communicated with the content provider, asked them to activate the certain package or the certain collection for their institution, and that's it. They're done. They just communicated with the provider. Now all they need to do is go back to Alma and search for the collection that they just purchased. Let me run again another search for art, but now I'm going to search for it in the community zone. If my search in my institution resulted in 228 collections, let me search the community zone to show you this very broad search. What are the results that I'm going to get? I just got a little bit less than 17,000 collection that answered my very broad search. This here to say that this is not my institution. I'm now in the community zone. The community zone hopefully holds all the content from all content providers that works with Exlibris. So my experience as a librarian will be, I went to the provider, I asked for them to provide me access to a certain collection, I accessed the community zone, I searched for the collection, and I activated it. What does that mean to activate a collection? In the community zone, this collection is not mine. All of these collections are not mine. These are not part of my institution. In order to have them available in my institution, I can click on the activate button, and then this collection will be linked to my institution. What are the advantages of linking a collection to my institution? The first advantage is that you don't need to ask the provider for a file. All of the titles mark records are within the community zone. So you need to access the community zone as a customer, click on the activate button, and the collection will be activated in your institution as a customer. Let me show you my experience. I took, before this webinar, I took the liberty of copying collection, which I would like you to see. I copied an idea of a collection. Let's just say I communicate with eBook Central, and I would like to purchase from them a certain collection. And this is the collection that I would like to purchase for literature and language. Before this webinar, I already activated this collection in my institution. As you can see, there's a small house icon. So the customer, the institution that sits in the community zone knows that after they click the activate button, this collection is already activated in their institution. Let's check it out. Right now, we see the collection as it appears in the community zone. Apparently, it's not in my institution just yet, but I want to see whether it is in my institution. So I'm going to click here on the small house icon and see that Alma will move from the community zone tab to my institution tab. I see that this collection is part of my institution. I see that this collection has 30,000 titles in it. If I'm not mistaken, let me go back to the community zone for a second. If I'm not mistaken, yes, the community zone collection, it has over 32,000 titles. That means that my institution chose to specifically activate specific 30,000 collections. And I also know that my institution chose not to get automatic activations for any added titles. So if I activated this collection a year ago when it had 30,000 titles, new titles did not come into my institution because I chose not to do that. But as part of the advantages that the community zone has, when I activate a collection from the community zone, I can decide that I want to get automatic updates, meaning that if the provider, if you added titles to your collection, you communicated with Exlibris, Exlibris added these titles to the relevant collection, and if institutions chose to do so, these titles were automatically added to their collection in their institution. Another advantage that the community zone has is the linking parameters. Once you update Exlibris with the linking parameter, once the provider updates Exlibris with the linking parameters, these linking parameters are passed to any customer who has activated the collection from the community zone. Customers have the option or has the option to work with a local collection and not work with community zone collections. They would ask you for a file for their holdings and they will upload these files. But in any scenario where the content provider updates the URL on the collection or update the titles in the collection or change the name of the titles or change the name of the collection, as a customer, I will not get updates since I'm not linked to the community zone collection. So we always recommend our customers, whenever they purchase a material from a certain content provider, we ask the customers to activate the collection from the community zone, so they will get all of these activation, changes, modifications, title additions for free without the need to do anything. Of course, as a customer-driven product, we listen to our customers. And a few years ago, customers stated that they do love the community zone and they love how the community zone activates titles for them, but they would like to see what was updated. This is why customers have the community zone update task list. I'm not going to go over it. I just want you to know that there is a task list for customers that tells them what were the changes for their collections? What were the changes for the collections they activated from the community zone? They may get updates for newly added titles. They get updates for removed titles, updates for URL modification. Any changes that the provider does and conveys it to Libris, the customer will get notifications so that they'll know that there were updates made. From my experience talking to customers, I understood that not only do they look on this task list, they tend to also check that these modifications really apply to their institutions, that their patrons can access the resources that they used to have access before, and that everything is aligned. So this is the community zone update task list. Let me go back and tell the story again. I'm an institution. I communicated with eBook Central. I asked them to purchase a certain collection. Then I went to the community zone and I activated this collection. Let me do this again. I activated the eBook Central Literature and Language collection. Sorry for the back and forth. I just want my story to be complete. I went to the community zone and click on the activate button. I'm not going to do it right now since it's time consuming. I did it before the meeting, but I want you to see now that in my institution, I have this collection. This is not what my patrons sees. This is what me as a librarian sees. I would like you now to see what the patron sees. What is the experience of the end user? So I'm going to click on the portfolio list to see all the 30,000 titles that are under this specific collection. And just as an example, I'm going to go over the first title and I'm going to click display in discovery. This will open a new tab. This tab is now the Primo interface. Remember that I told you that we have the interface for the librarian and the interface for the patron or the researcher. This is the interface for the patron. When they access the library and they search for something, this is what they see. In our example, I access it from Alma, so I'm focused on the specific resource that I wanted to see. I'm going to click on the link here as a patron, and I'm being redirected to the relevant platform, which will present me the options for me to access the resource that I wanted. This is kind of the end-to-end workflow that I wanted to pass to you. The customer accesses their Alma, they access the community zone, they activate the collection, and this collection is now available in their institution for their patrons. Any updates that will come for Ex Libris from the provider will be reflected to the academic institution who activated this collection from the community zone. And this is the result you see as an end user perspective. This is what the end user will see. Let me go back to my presentation with your permission. We did the live demo. Just a quick recap. We spoke about the Alma menu. We spoke about the persistent search. We saw that the persistent search has two main elements, which is the institution zone, my institution holding, and we saw that there's the community zone, which is not the institution holding, but it's Alma's or Ex Libris knowledge base, which holds, I'm saying all the content from all content providers, because that's the inspiration. And then customers can access the community zone, activate the collections, activate your content as providers in their Alma. Let me pause right now to see if I have any questions in the chat. Let me be brave to try and open the chat, the Q&A. Give me a second. I am more Q&A. Okay. Okay, so I'm seeing that there are some questions. What is the difference between Alma and Summon and Primo and the CDI? All right, so I'll summarize the question. There's a question that asking what is the difference between Alma, Summon and Primo, and CDI. And the reason that I pause between all these products is because Alma is a library management system, which is oriented for the librarian. This is library management, not for patrons, for the librarian, for the academic institution, for the libraries in the institution. Summon and Primo are the discovery systems. They work very well with Alma. If Alma is the back office, Summon and Primo are the front end. This is what the patron sees. So we have Alma for the library, Summon and Primo for the academic researchers or for the students. Different interface, the one we just saw at the end of my live demo. CDI, or Central Discovery Index, is another layer, and I have a slide about it, is another layer where we have article level or chapter level information. With your permission, I'm going to elaborate on that in a few more slides. Hi, Noam, the files that the institution used to get the providers are these, the files came out. Okay, there's a question here whether the files that the institution used to get from the provider are KBART file, or in other words, title lists, or MARC files. The good answer, I think, is both. If the provider has a holistic approach, the provider will give you the titles that are part of this collection, and the provider will also give you the MARC records for each title. Why? Because as we know, the richer the MARC record is, the easier it will be to find the material in the discovery system. So for me, when I just search for art keywords, the answers, the result that I got is because the MARC record had good enough information to provide me with these results. The richer the MARC record is, the better the search results will be for the patron. So as content providers, I really recommend you to not only provide us with KBART file with the title list, but also MARC records as enriched as possible. So your patrons, so my patrons, so our patrons will have the best option to find whatever they need, and for your content to be exposed to as many researchers or patrons as possible. Content providers share with Exlibris both the title list and the KBART file. They also share with us MARC feed for the CDI. I'm going to talk about CDI in a few minutes. For the community zone task list, how do providers share the list, what was updated with Exlibris? Okay, so when providers want to update us that there are new titles added to an existing collection, we have a dedicated communication with provider. There are three main options to communicate with Exlibris regarding provider content. The first option, the provider can load their MARC records or their KBART file, their title list, into our what we call FTP or MFT, into Exlibris servers. And then our automation, we have a dedicated team, which we call operations team. Our team looks inside these folders in an ongoing basis, some done on a weekly basis. We are now moving to what we call direct ingest, where we have daily updates. This is something that we really thrive to do, to have all the content update on a daily basis. But to finish the story, the content provider gives us their information, place their files on our servers, and our automation updates the community zone. Another option, if the provider is managing their content in an external website, in their website, Exlibris knows to harvest any information from the website and updates our knowledge bases. There are several other options, but essentially Exlibris will work with any providers who is able to provide us with KBART files and with MARC records. Is video metadata also supported by Alma? Yes, any metadata that the provider would like us to share in the community zone can be part of the community zone. Video is included. I know that there are now work in progress in the NISO committees to kind of standardize the metadata for video and see whether we need to enhance the protocols. But yes, short answer, Alma does support videos. Okay, there are a few more questions. I would like to focus on one of them with your permission, just to make sure I'm on time, and maybe I'll get back to these questions again. But I think the most important question here is, as a provider, how do we get the access you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar? And thank you for asking this. I'm going to try and minimizing the Q&A. I know you're not able to see it, but I'm seeing it. And I'm going to try moving this window. Okay, I'm back to the presentation right now. I really hope you can still see it. But to your question, how can you see your content? This is this was the most important part of this webinar. I wanted you to see an initiative that we started a little bit after I joined the team. When I joined the team, I got a present. I got what we call the provider platform right now. I got the ability to provide content providers a platform where they can see their content. So without any further ado, let me go back to my live demo and tell you about the provider platform. Try to see this. This is Primo. I'm going to move Primo to be right here. And I am now taking again my hat. I am no longer Noam from the provider relation teams. I'm taking off my institution hat. I'm no longer an academic institution. I am now a content provider. I am ebook central. Just a demo. It's just an explanation about what is the perspective of the provider when they access the provider platform. So I know what you see right now is very similar to what I showed you about the Alma login. And you're right, very similar. If you have internet access from your home, from your office, even from your mobile phone, you can access the provider platform, or I can access as a provider the provider platform. All I need is to email Noam saying, hey, Noam, I saw your great webinar. Can you please provide me credentials to access the provider platform? Once you will get your credentials and the URL, you will be able to access the provider platform. I'm going to click on the login for a second. Again, I am now a content provider. I'm eBook Central. I want you to see what I see. This is what hopefully you will see if you would like to gain access to see your content. You will see something very similar to Alma, but with two major differences. The first one is the menu. This is why it was important for me to pass you how Alma looks and what is the menu, because you do not have a menu. As content provider, at this point in time, you don't have any option to run any or access any specific pages in the provider platform. What you do have is the top search bar. But again, it's a bit different than what you saw in Alma. You're not able to search all the entities that Alma can provide the ability for the academic institution. You're able to search only for your content. Let's run a test to see what I talk about. So I'm now searching for electronic collection. I'm going to do the exact same search that I did before. I did this search twice already. First of all, I did it in my institution when I was the institution. I saw that I got, I think, 228 results. I did it another time in the community zone and I saw that I got 17,000 results. And now as content provider, as eBook Central, when I search for art, I got 126 results. Why did I got this number? Because this search query is was found or did found the relevant collections under my provider platform. These are collections that are only eBook Central collection. And just to prove you that, I see that in my facet panel, the only interface that appear here are eBook Central. If I was now in the community zone, I see that I have interfaces from multiple content provider. Right now, the provider platform, or when you'll gain access to your provider platform, your name will be here. So if you're Springer or Taylor and Francis or JSTOR or any other provider that now has access already to the provider platform, they see only the interfaces that they have access to. Right now, in this point in time, a little bit over 30 providers have access to the provider platform. If you would like to gain access to the provider platform, please email me. Specify, of course, the name of the provider and specify that you would like to gain access to the provider platform. Let me show you a bit what you see as a provider. So first of all, you have the ability to search for a specific collection in your provider platform. You have also the ability to search for a specific title in your platform and see under which collections this title exists. I want us to see for the search electronic collection that I did, what is the information that I see here? I see the name of the collection. I see that this is a selective package. I see that the interface or the provider name is eBook Central. I see the last update date that this collection had, which is on the 15th. I think we are now on the 16th. So I'm happy to say that yesterday, this collection was updated. What does that mean? If you, as content provider, contacted Libris saying, hey, this specific collection, I added more titles to it, you'll be able to see that the titles were added to this collection because the updated was done on the 15th, which is yesterday. I'm sorry about the date. It's a bit format that more European than American. Okay, this is a very high level explanation about what we see on the left column. On the middle column, if you are providing MARC records for CDI, you have information about the CDI activation, sorry, the CDI updates. And I think one of the most important parts that I want us to take time is the collection ID. When you'll have access to the provider platform, not only will you be able to see your content and understand which collections you have with Libris, how many titles are under each collection, you also be able to see the collection ID. Why is this important? Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, when I communicated with content providers and with customers, One of the, I would say, frequent pain point that I've heard is that there are cases where customers communicate with content providers after they tried to find the collection in the community zone and they were not able to locate it. And they always ask the provider to help them. And then the provider needs to communicate with Libris, and then Libris needs to tell the provider the collection ID, and then the provider needs to communicate with the customer. This is, I would say, very bad sunny side scenario. The even worse scenario is that the provider asks the customer to communicate with Libris to understand what is the collection ID. We do not want our customers to be the middleman here. We really want to provide the provider as much information as possible so they can help their customers when they have questions. So for the question I just said, if the customer asks content provider, what is the collection name in Alma, the first thing they can do is to provide the customers with the collection name. But since this may result in multiple results, you are able to also provide the customer with the collection ID. So maybe as part of the process that your sales team are communicating with academic institution and say, okay, you have access for the eBook Central perpetual DDA and subscription titles, they can also provide them with information regarding the collection ID, which will result for, I think, better experience for our common customer or joint customer, because they will know exactly what they'll need to activate from the community zone. Quick recap. As a content provider, I can access and see all of my content. Just let me give you a tip or a cheat and trick. I can search for interface name and do this wildcard search. And when I'll do this, it may take a few seconds, but this is a way for me as a content provider to see all of my collections. So when I search for art, I saw that I have 126 collection that answered my search query. Now I know that all of my collection is eBook Central, which are reflected in Alma for customers in the community zone, are 130. This is everything. I can ask myself, wait, I know that I sell 132 collections, so how come I'm missing 2 collections here? I'm able to export this list of collection, run deduplication between my systems and Libris, and see what collections are missing. This is one scenario. Another scenario is that I know that the mental health collection has 6,000 titles, but I see that in the community zone, there are only 5,000 titles. This is a proactive way for you to say, or to communicate with the provider relation team, with my team, and tell them, listen, I think that I'm missing 1,000 titles. I just uploaded a new file. Can you update your systems? This is a proactive measure. And the bottom line here, what I really wanted, or what we really want in Libris, is to save the customer from communicating with you, from communicating with Libris, and kind of raising these questions or these mismatches with you. We want to communicate with you. We want our back and forth to be between the provider and Libris, and to have our joint customers as happy as possible with a streamlined experience as possible. I'm going to pause. This is the provider platform. I'm going back to my presentation, and I just want to make sure that we reviewed everything. We saw that there are no menu items, and we saw that the search options are electronic portfolio and electronic collection. I promise I'm going to go over the questions, but I do want to emphasize something. The reason that we chose to leave this black bar here is because we wanted you, content provider, to understand that you have access to the provider platform. You can see your content, but the word platform is a very important word here. Libris is very open to enhance the platform. So if you see that there's any need that you can think of that the provider can answer, that the provider platform can answer, please communicate with us. Tell us that the provider platform is amazing, but it could be enhanced. Or tell us that the provider platform is fine, but we are missing this and that. Any feedback that we will get, we may add it to our roadmap and have you as content provider work better with us. How you can communicate with us. And the next slide, oh, sorry, let's just go over this pieces of information that I shared. And I want to share with you a bit of the feedback that we got from providers who access the provider platform. As I mentioned, since late 2023, providers gain access to the provider platform. This is just short feedback that we got. I really wanted to keep it shorter, but everything here was important, so I emphasized the most important bits. I want you to know that content providers who are currently utilizing the provider platform reported that they have increased need or decreased need, sorry, to communicate with Libris. They have better options to communicate with their customers. They have option when the customers report them a question. They have option to see what the customers see. And this is a game changer from their perspective because from the provider perspective, because they don't need to communicate with Libris. They don't need to bother the customer. Can you send us a screenshot? Hopefully, the more and more providers will be added to the provider platform, and we really want all providers to have access to the provider platform. This will reduce the number of cases that Libris gets. This will reduce the number of cases you get from your customers, and hopefully this will increase the collaboration between Libris and content providers. So I spoke to you a bit about the community zone, a bit about CDI, about Primo, about the provider platform. This presentation will be shared in the documentation page, and these are links. So if you have any need or any aspiration to learn more about the community zone, everything here is clickable. If you have anything you would like to learn other than these 4 links, this is a link to the entire Alma documentation. You're able to explore there and really get to the things that you would like to understand. The provider platform is very similar to the Alma interface. So if there's anything you can't find in the provider platform documentation, and let us just review this documentation for a second. This is the documentation that explains what are the advantages of the provider platform, how to log in, explanation about the user interface. Scroll down a bit. There's also a nice Q&A section here. So if you have anything that you are missing, most likely you will find it in the Alma documentation, since the provider platform is based on the Alma platform. And essentially all the information you see as a provider is based on the community zone, and all the documentation that exists in the community zone is also relevant for the provider platform. Last thing before I focus on the question, we have a dedicated communication channel within Basecamp. Basecamp is a tool that allows multiple stakeholders to communicate. This channel, which we call Libris Provider Advisory Group, is a space where we want to share, we want providers to share their ideas, share their thoughts about the provider platform, share their thoughts in general. So I'm going to go back to my browser for a second and show you the message board that is now inside the Basecamp. As you can see, it's a very active channel. We just opened it early 2024, and I'm happy to see that providers are communicating amongst themselves with Libris. We have a channel to communicate. This is something that I picked up from my work when I worked with Alma customers or with Libris customers. We have a very strong working group. Whenever we develop something on the Alma platform for our customers, we always communicate with customers. We ask for their opinions. We ask for their suggestions. We get their feedback, and then we only develop. This channel is set to do the same. I would like to get feedback from you as content provider to understand how we can improve, not only with the provider platform, but in general. If you have any questions, for example, I see here that there was communication regarding the Iluna conference, which is upcoming in a month. I invited providers to join me to a roundtable. I'm going to discuss about it at the end of this webinar, but this was a discussion that was in Basecamp. So whenever I'll provide you your credentials for the provider platform, I'll also add you to this Basecamp channel so you can be a silent member if you want and review the questions and answers, or an active member and really support the entire communication that we have here. Bottom line, in order to support our joint customers. Going back to the presentation, I'm pausing for questions. In the meantime, you have my email here. If you would like to gain access to the provider platform, please send me an email with the name of the provider. Your email will be there, of course, and I will work with my development team. And as soon as I have your credentials, I'll share it with you. I'm now opening the Q&A. Okay, let me just slide down. See. Hello, is it possible for publishers to access the platform? The answer is yes. Once you'll email me and I'll give you the credentials, you'll have ability to access the platform and see only your content exactly like customers sees it. It would be great if we could share updates about acquisition, to ask librarians to update discovery links, etc. If we acquire a new job. Okay, so the provider platform as a fundamental tool provides you access to see your content. If you have any enhancements that you think will benefit you or will benefit you and our joint customers, either shoot me an email or write in Basecamp so we can see the support of other providers, and then we'll be able to enhance the platform. We distribute our MARC records to ProQuest for the Oasis system. Do these records get distributed to these systems from that feed? That's a good question. The question is from a provider that passes their MARC information to ProQuest. As you know, Libris, ProQuest, and Clarivate is under the same umbrella. My short answer is it depends. Why? Because every provider has an agreement with Libris. If the agreement includes that the MARC feed can come from ProQuest, we will know to pick it up from there. But if the agreement is specific for Libris, you will need to provide Libris specifically the MARC records. So I suggest you to communicate with the content provider relation team that you work with, the team member that you work with, and ask them if their MARC feed is being reflected in the community zone. If not, you can ask them to, or you can ask us to work with ProQuest, or you can pass us the feed so we can ingest it and put it in the community zone. Hi, Noam. If we provide cable, okay, this we went over. Have you made any changes to the provider platform as a result of the feedback from early users? Yes. Okay, so right before today, the provider platform was in the early adoption phase. Now that this provider platform was after a webinar and it's officially out there, any enhancement request that we got will be presented in Basecamp. I have a list of enhancements that I summarized from communication with providers from Basecamp, will be reflected in Basecamp, and I will give you a heads up whenever we would like to enhance the provider platform. For example, we have heard from content provider that it would be a good thing or good information to be presented in the provider platform about the number of activations that Alma customers activated the collections from the community zone. This information, the activation information, is already available for Alma customers, so they will know from which region institutions activated this specific collection, and it will help them understand whether they need to activate this collection or other collection. Regarding the perspective of the provider platform, we did not add it just yet, but we really try to think if we can add this information to the provider platform. This is the first thing that we tackle. Let me give you another example of a request we got. I talked to you about the community zone update task list, where customers can see what were the updates that were done in the community zone. We've heard from content provider that it would have been great if they had the same thing. So let me pass it as a form of a story. Content providers communicate with Libris about an existing collection that they want to add 17 titles to it. They email Libris saying, hey, did you add these titles? Hey, did you add these titles? No more. You're able to access the provider platform and see whether these titles were added. But let's just say that this collection had 13,000 titles and it's hard to find the specific titles. You can either search for these titles, or hopefully in the future, you will have a tool which is called the update task list, and you will be able to see for each collection what were the updates. For my story, you will be able to see that for the specific collection, there were 17 titles added. I see that I have 10 more minutes. I'm going to go back to the presentation with your permission and give you a very quick overview about the provider relations team. The provider relation team is the team that is set to communicate between Libris and content provider. We want content providers to share their title lists, to share their MARC records, to share their CDI feed with Libris. Our job is to make sure that everything is aligned within our knowledge bases. The next thing that happens, institutions communicate with content providers in terms of acquisitions. They acquire access for certain collections, certain packages. And then, as I showed you in the demo, the institution activates these resources from our community zone. My team really looks up to the provider, really hopes to work best with the provider to make sure that our customers will have the best experience as possible. My team is right here between Libris and content providers. We have 10 PR analysts who are looking at you as if you are the best person in the world. We really want to work good with you to make our customer happy. We have 5,000 providers which we are communicated with. We have 5,000 providers which grant us mark records, title lists, CDI information for our Alma, for SFX, for 360, which are 3 knowledge bases, for CDI, which is the Central Discovery Index. This is an index that is focused on title level and, article level and chapter level metadata. This will be reflected in Primo for our patrons. We have over 40,000 collection and over 50 million bibliographic records. In CDI, we have over 5 billion records. So that's a good number for my team to make sure that everything is aligned. And bottom line, the most important thing that I would like to convey is that our goal is to make our customers happy by making sure that our knowledge base is up to date with all of the titles that exist in the provider interface or in the provider website should be updated in our knowledge bases. Accuracy, all the links in these titles should reach the exact point so that the patron will not have broken links. And quality, mark records. Any provider that shared with us quality mark records, rest assured your content would be exposed as accurate as possible for our joint customer, for the patrons. Really quick overview about our knowledge bases. We have 3 knowledge bases. We have our 360 KB, we have our SFX KB, and we have the community zone. These are the numbers who now we increased it to 40,000 already, and every year we are growing more and more and more. Our knowledge bases have collection and title level metadata. We have our resource management tool and the link resolver, and providers, from your perspective, you give us KBART, title lists, and mark records. Another index that we have is the CDI, the Central Discovery Index. This index is separate from our knowledge bases. It's exposed for patrons in the discovery system in Primo, like we've just seen. It has information, it has metadata about specific article level or chapter or book chapter level, really provides great service for our customers. So if you have any metadata in an XML format that is chapter level or article level oriented, share it with us to improve our joint customer experience. I see that I have 6 more minutes. I really want to tell you a very high level explanation about our activities and see if I can answer some more questions. First thing that I would like to pass to you, we have the AI enrichment process. This is a link that will take you to a page that explains about this process. But I want you to know that Exlibris is now working to create quality mark records using an AI tool. This AI tool scans a PDF, a full text file. It knows to retrieve several metadata fields and construct a Mark 21 mark file. This is a big change, I think, mainly for providers who are not able to provide quality mark records. So if you are a provider that is having difficulty or not even at all providing us mark record, but you do have an ability to share with us your full texts, please contact me and I will communicate you or I'll connect you with my team member. So you'll be able to work together, provide Exlibris with your PDF, just access to the PDF so we can harvest the data there and use the AI tool and produce quality mark records, place them in the community zone and improve our customers' ability to be exposed to your content. This is the AI enrichment. Send me an email if you are interested and able to share your PDF. We have another initiative which we call the Manifest. This is an initiative which is set to address new collection creation. Our customers have a platform which we call Idea Exchange. They keep on saying, hey, can you please add this specific collection that the provider added? Or you communicate with us, providers communicate with Exlibris saying, we've added a new collection. They send us an email. Can you please see that the title list is updated in your knowledge bases? We want to try and improving that. We don't want our customers to tell us that there's a new collection. We really want you to tell us there is a new collection, but not over an email. We want to automate this process. So if you have an ability to automate the process on your end and send Exlibris the title list in an automatic way, or if you're interested to become an early adopter or early tester and work with us on this kind of automation, so Libris systems will know automatically that you have a new collection, shoot me an email and tell me that you're interested in becoming our early partner. The last thing I want to invite you is to the Eluna Roundtable. We have a conference next month, Eluna conference. If you are joining as a provider, I'll be happy if you communicate with me because I have a roundtable there where I communicate with customers. I will be happy to add you to this session. So I'll have kind of a three-way, the triangle that I showed before, from customers, Libris, and also from content providers. So if you're joining this session, if you're joining, Eluna, I'll be happy if you join this session. Next webinar is totally up to you. I really, really want you to either shoot me an email or put in Basecamp the things that you would like to hear from Libris, the explanation that you would like to get from Libris, anything that you find interesting. If you want to do a shared webinar, I'm totally open for suggestions. Right now, the tentative next session will be around the new collection creation, but I'm totally open for changes. If there's something that you think that can be more interested for you, let me know. My sales team or my marketing team asked me to tell you that there's a very nice session reduction with Dr. Safia from Dr. Noble from that works with us about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're invited to join us this session. Once you'll have access to this presentation, you can register. And we spoke about the Eluna session. I see that I have 2 more minutes, so let me try and jumping to my Q&A. Just go there. I'm going to toggle all the way to the end and work my way up. Are providers able to test access from the provider platform portfolios? Let's see. I believe that the answer is yes, but let's see. I am now in the provider platform. I know because I don't see any menu items. I'm moving the Q&A. I'm clicking on the specific portfolio list. Okay, I do not see the test access on the level of the portfolio, but this is definitely, let me see this, for example. Oh, good. I think I can. Linking. Yes, there is an ability to test access. So as content provider, if you click on the test access and wait for a few seconds, you'll see that you get what you need. If you would not be able to get what you need, you would also see that there is a link who is not working. This is a good example. Maybe it's because I don't have the credentials I need to see, but essentially, yes, you are able to test the access. Okay, I see that Rel answered some questions. Thank you, Rel. Has Clarivate gone out previously and contacted providers telling them to sign up? No, we did not communicate with providers just yet and telling them to sign up to the provider platform. We have a new procedure now that any new provider that will come and ask to join Libris will get credentials to access the provider platform. This webinar is set to expose the provider platform to the world. I guess, or I expect after this webinar to get multiple emails asking providers asking me to open them the provider platform. And we will keep communicating with existing content providers, telling them about this initiative and providing them with credentials. I would like to thank you at this point in time, and I see we are top of the hour. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar. I hope you found it interesting. If you have any questions, suggestions, feel free to either post it on Basecamp. If you have anything specific regarding your content, communicate with the specific provider relation team member that works with you. Feel free to ask us any questions. We are totally available for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rel, for helping me do this. Have a good day.